on the live transcript. If any of you would like to follow along with that live transcript, it's in place too. And with that, my name is Linda Wiley. I'm a doctoral student at Baker University and an associate with the National Center for Media Literacy. I'm moderating your session today, and I'm honored to be here today with Karen LaPlant and Zala. Oh, Zala, I didn't get the pronunciation of your last name. Do it for me. Thank you.
Right.
I was so worried about your first name. Reflection to Perfection, Forward-Looking Teaching Design. And as I said before, you're really in for a treat today. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen to get us started.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Karen LaPlant. I'm a retired IT faculty from Hennepin Technical College in Minnesota State System. And Zala is joining us from Greece. He's also retired from Minnesota State. So we're hoping to bring you a new look on forward-looking teaching design. And I'm going to turn off my video just to get better bandwidth and let Zala start the process.
Well,
we
welcome.
will be doing some questions
good morning
in
or
the
good
chat.
afternoon, or from Greece, good evening. So at any rate, we got all those different parts of the day covered at this point. So let me see here. There we go. Let's just take a look at it. Really, when we really kind of think about this, we're really thinking about the idea of using reflection, and that again, the future of everything that we're going to be doing is more of the mirror than the crystal ball. So as you forecast and you predict kind of where things are going and how that is, we really need to look back at what it is that we've done, and especially during the last 2 years of the pandemic, what have we learned and where have we gone forward with that. And so we're going to talk about how that's done in course design. But let's first of all talk about forward-looking teaching. And as we go through that, one of the nicest things is that it really helps faculty teach effectively. So the biggest thing is looking toward the future, not teaching the way that we've always taught. We've certainly learned a couple of years ago that we needed to be able to make those changes. When Karen and I first started working with this online course design institute that we have, part of what we really did is we got people out of that remote emergency teaching kind of thing and moved into what it's like to sort of dual design at that point. And so it becomes more of a chance for us to really spend time with truly lifelong learning and getting people to sort of change their perspectives into this polycentric thinking, being able to bring in a lot of different things in the design of our teaching, in the design of the courses that we're creating and everything that way, so that we're really taking a look at not what the publisher's view is, but we're looking again at what we want to be able to have students to be able to do. And kind of, again, coming up with this big dream, this big idea of where you're trying to take students so that they're set beyond the end of your course, beyond the end of your curriculum, into the workplace, and how it will affect both their personal and professional lives. So I wanted to take just a moment to read about what my definition or what our definition is about significant learning. So I'll give you a second to read through this. It really starts to form those transformational skills, and we obviously know that now there are so many more things that we need to be able to do with students and that we've wanted to do with students. I've worked in faculty development since the early 2000s, and so for the past 10 years really working in faculty development as well as doing the course design, working with a lot of teaching and learning kinds of opportunities in higher ed. And before that, K-12, and really taking a look at what it is that we wanted to get from our students and where we wanted them to be able to go with all this. Wanted to show you the cycle of course design map, and this is something that we're going to be using today as we go through looking at this. We kind of start in this lower left-hand corner. We'll work through and we'll talk about all this as you go in sort of a clockwise formation, and we'll spend some time getting into that. But the left-hand side of that really becomes sort of, again, this is the everything that goes into what we think of as significant learning and the ways that you design it, the ways that you create it and put it together. So everything from pre-planning with situational factors all the way up through the communication, the learning technologies, accessibility, all those pieces come together so that faculty and instructional designers really get a chance to take a look at what provides significant learning, what is going to make that mission statement come true. The right-hand side of that model that we showed you before is going to be a big assessment piece. Again, as we take a look at assessing course quality, we look at assessing student learning all the way through the program institutional assessment, which then leads again back to our own teaching practice kind of assessment. And so that becomes kind of an important part as we look at this to then start the cycle again with the pre-planning as you want to redesign. One of the strategies that we think has become very, very, very important is that we use reflection to be able to do that, reflection to perfection. In learning what it is that we figure out as we're teaching, after we're done teaching, and we have a chance to reflect and think deeper about what it is that we're doing with our students as climate changes, whether that's a pandemic or that's industry changes or wherever your graduates are going to. We really want to spend some time thinking about where we're taking them and how we're meeting their needs. On top of it, in the proper design, not only we're going to give time for faculty or instructional designers to sort of reflect on this, we want to add the student reflection pieces. And by putting student reflection and really blending it throughout the entire course, you'll see that there's a lot of opportunities to get feedback, to get data from students and telling us how the courses are running, what they're learning, how they're learning it, what they're taking forward with them. And so let's break that down a little bit deeper in the pre-planning part, which we call starting. Situational factors. One of the things that we do when we work with people on course design and their teaching is we'll start to really take a look at what the situational factors are. And you can see we have a worksheet, a design sheet here that we start to really lay this out. A lot of people, when they're going to redesign a course, start in the course and start thinking about that. But we really want to take some time to reflect upon that at the very beginning. We take a look at which of these things are within our control, which of these are not within our control. Obviously, we can't do a lot about the latter, but we can certainly think a lot about how it is that we're going to be able to do the things that we can put into the course design right away from the beginning to make sure this is good. Now, we're using some of the stuff that DFINC created back in the early 2000s. And as we did that, and we have built upon that, Dee actually helped us when we wrote the book, Designing Effective Teaching Significant Learning. He wrote the foreword. So we're using some of those materials because we've all used these materials with faculty. We know that they're successful. We know that they actually help create an idea that you can begin to think about where you want to go with your course. And so taking an assessment of your course right away at the beginning and reflecting about what's gone well or what hasn't gone well becomes extremely important. We really want to break this down to this part of the reflection, the characteristics of learners, where we can really add the culturally responsive teaching and pedagogy. We get that forward-looking reflection, who's in the course, who are the future clients or customers as we go through there, and then who are future work colleagues, and getting people to think a lot about that, students especially. Where are they going to go with all of this information? And then obviously doing the same thing with the characteristics of instructors as well. In both of those things, one of the things that we've added to this chart has been a little bit more about introverts and extroverts, and we'll talk about that shortly. But as we look at the characteristics of learners, we really want to take a look at where the introverts, extroverts are, and how we design the course so that it can be successful for both. One of our other colleagues, Linda Russell, one of the authors of the book, also helped write this with myself for Insight Higher Ed about this idea of designing courses for introverts and extroverts, giving us a chance to take a look at what it is that we can be conscious of in our design as it goes through that. So what we want to do here is, as we start to think about the characteristics, all of the situational factors that take place prior to the course, we really want to get to a point where we create the big dream, which is, again, sort of your course's mission statement. It gives you this idea of what it is that you're truly trying to do with this course? How do you make it yours? How do you take everything that you know about what this course could do, what you want your students to be able to do, and you sort of create again that two-statement or the two-sentence kind of an idea that breaks that out. Now, what becomes very important here is that so many faculty find this extremely revealing to themselves. They love to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to design a course that I get to actually have something in to say because I know where I want my students to be. I know what they're going to need for the business, the industry, their career that they're moving into, and I want them to be able to have all of those pieces. And so they put that together in their mission statement, which is the big dream. So as we have worked with over 300 faculty during the pandemic in redesigning courses, especially when it took them where they had very little online experience, and we wanted to take their face-to-face courses and help them retool and put them forward so that they could teach those courses online, we created these dual delivery types of course philosophies where you can pivot easily. Now, where we both live in Minnesota at times, we get snowstorms, and so do a lot of you where you live. And you start to realize that your campus gets closed, other things begin to happen, that you cannot run your class in a face-to-face style. I know that from previously being faculty and being in the administrative role as a dean, it became important to me to start to realize that when you lost a week of instruction, that got to be very, very difficult. And so to be able to quickly and easily move from a face-to-face type course into an online course as you've needed to do that, that becomes really important. It also helped me because I lost fewer students in a retention type of thing as we went through the semester. Somebody got sick, they needed to go to the hospital, they could keep up. As they were feeling better, they could get back into the course, they could continue working. Other people who had to leave or let's say travel for work and had to be gone and missing a face-to-face type course had a lot better chance of being able to continue the course, doing things through a web conferencing tool like Zoom, or had the opportunity to be able to keep up with the material and keep up with the discussions with their classmates, come back and join right in and make it as seamless as possible. It also gave us a chance to really take a look at sharing of voices to discover what were some of the things that people went through and what did they learn as they started to look at the pandemic and how they had to change their design. So let's get into that design piece right now. If we take a look at this whole teaching strategy alignment piece, this is where we're matching the learner outcomes to the activities, to the feedback and assessment parts, and we begin to really tear that apart and to make sure that they align, analyzing it, reflecting on what's been working well, what hasn't been working well. That's what our work is in this part of the selection. One of the things that Dee's model was over on the right-hand side from 2013, and you can see we've added a piece in 2020 with this whole design communication, the accessibility, the learning technologies, because we've really strongly felt as though those parts also led to significant learning. Having all those pieces woven into the class, into the course design, made that happen. And it gave you a lot more to be able to reflect about, to be able to decide what the direction of the course is going to be and how well your students are truly learning. So let's look at Dee's integrated course design type of thing. And again, you can see the situational factors at the bottom. You see this middle part of aligning, but we know that today we have a lot more than just alignment to work with when it comes to being able to deliver significant learning. So I'm going to show you again, we're going to take a look at the taxonomy of significant learning. This is going to be a part that's a little different than those of you who've used Bloom's before. However, Bloom's is woven into the middle of this whole thing. And there are 6 pie pieces you take a look at. If you remember Trivial Pursuit, we want to be able to make sure that we have all of these pie pieces worked into each course. So you start with the foundational knowledge, you work to the application, you then have students who are integrating. All of these become critically important. when it comes to sort of the cognitive side of what it is that we're trying to get students to be able to learn. However, there's more. And as I've worked with faculty, like I said, since the early 2000s, Karen doing the same thing by my side, and she was working on a campus, I was working at the system level. We started to realize that faculty, whether it's 2-year faculty or 4-year faculty, began to realize that there's a lot more to it, what they wanted their students to do. They wanted the human dimension. They wanted students to learn about themselves. They wanted to learn about how to work well with others. There's this whole caring. What are they valuing? What are their feelings and interests in the topic that you're teaching them and the subject, so that they can really take that forward and it can feed what they want to be able to have in what they value or what they think is becoming very, very important in their learning. And then finally, it's that learning how to learn piece. I've taught everything from 3rd graders all the way to graduate students. And the number one question I get from every one of those is, how am I doing? Am I doing well enough? What is it that I could be doing better? And the problem got to be, why is it that graduate students are asking the same question that 3rd graders are asking? And part of it for me was they're not learning how to learn, and they really need to have a piece like that in there. Okay, so as you can see, again, as I just mentioned, there's a cognitive side of this wheel, there's the affective side of this wheel, and it's all within one model, one taxonomy. And you can take a look at this one, rather than taking Bloom's cognitive style and then looking at the affective model style, and be able to put those two together and go back and forth and try and design your course. This is all done in one. So this is one of the things that we do with the faculty that we're working with. We have this table that we use. You can see here that we have foundational knowledge, application, integration. Integration. With what we're looking at here is we have a great opportunity to take a look at each one of those domains. So we started with this 3-column table, and the 3-column table again got them to sort of take a look at what their outcomes were going to be, competencies, objectives, whatever your term for that would be. We started to take a look at the assessments, using multiple measures to be able to assess in both a face-to-face and an online course. And this is where we get this dual delivery assessment design, to be able to have them take a look at that right away from the very beginning, so that they could easily have everything in their LMS and teach the course in a face-to-face, online, or blended type model somewhere in between there. So that gives people a lot of flexibility to be able to switch and pivot on a dime. We changed this actually to what we call the 6-column table now, because there's actually 6 columns that they can work with, because more and more of our disciplines needed to have some place to put competencies. They needed to have some place that were different from course outcomes, or they wanted unit objectives that they were putting in there to meet the course outcomes. So we broke that down. We also took a look at the assessments and the learning activities, and we started to talk about the time and the resources that were going to be needed. This became kind of an important piece, especially when you think what takes certain amount of time in a face-to-face situation and what takes place in an online situation. And so knowing that sometimes online activities are going to take longer than a face-to-face activity, or vice versa, that becomes kind of an important thing to really work and think through ahead of time in your course design. At this point, we'd like to give you an opportunity to do some talking. So if you would please share your own experiences of the changes that you needed to make in your teaching and course design during the pandemic, please use the chat. Karen's monitoring the chat. We'll get some people talking and share some of the things that you all are thinking about as to what you needed to go through during this pandemic time and some of the lessons that you learned in your own teaching.
Well, I'll start it out. I was teaching a course, and I had to become more flexible based on what was happening in my students' lives, them being at home and trying to find a room to work in and having sick people to care for. So I had to learn to be much more flexible. Well, at least one person agreed with me, flexibility.
I think that as we talked with faculty, that was one of the things that they started to realize, is that there was sometimes the expectations for assignments being turned in, the amount of barriers that got in the way of having to switch to online to be able to do things where people weren't as familiar with online as they were in a face-to-face situation, got to be very, very difficult, and they needed to be more patient and more flexible in looking at assignments. Karen, others?
Yes, a curriculum of care and empathy for our learners. Someone else said changes on how I use active learning on Zoom or online, along with clear course navigation. And then Rebecca says, as a senior online ID, I had to talk faculty off the ledge many times going from face-to-face to online. Very true.
And really working with all those tools that were different. And some of the tools people were already used to working with, and some of them very not so much so. I know the very first semester we ever did this with faculty at a state university, we discovered that a lot of them had used the grade book and the LMS. And that was probably the extent of what they knew about how to use for tools in the LMS, which the LMS was quite, had a great deal of set of tools, as well as was rather robust to be able to work with. And they struggled with that. Anyone else, Karen?
Acknowledgement of all the things and saying them very openly.
Nice, very nice. And that's true. Let's take a look at this design communication, and Karen's going to take over at this point as we really take a look at how this piece becomes very, very important. And what we found out is that many faculty didn't have sort of a design communication plan that was proactive.
Yes, because especially course communication is important in all courses, but especially when you're online. So you build up community, you build up engagement, but you have to do it, in my opinion, through intentionally designed communication, okay? Many faculty in workshops state that they hadn't thought to actually design an intentional communication pathway. So we've come up with a plan. Like I said, it wouldn't be the exact same plan for every course you taught, but a plan for how you would communicate with your students and let them know. It could be anywhere from a standard weekly announcement in your LMS. It could be they signed up for notifications in the LMS, or you had a mobile app like D2L has Pulse, some method that the students knew that you would be not just willy-nilly sending them things. So it's not quantity, it's quality, okay?
One of the things that we haven't shared thus far is, excuse me, is the fact that both Karen and I have worked with Quality Matters and we've reviewed courses. Karen also does that within her discipline to be able to take a look at courses or programs that are going through reaccreditation. And so one of the things that ends up happening for us is we see courses and we see people who are designing courses, and frankly, the communication piece is all over. And when you start to think that a student is taking your course and maybe 3 other instructors' courses, and they may not even be at the same institution, they may be across several institutions where they're bringing courses together. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. And so consequently, by you having at least an intentional course communication plan, that becomes extremely important for them to know that at a particular time during the week, they're going to hear from you on this, or they're going to do that. It also helps you feel very confident in the fact that you know that these announcements, that this communication is going out, and that you're using the tools to be able to help you with that. So you spend less time running the course and more time really working with your students.
And there's lots of different ways to do this. And that's what the second question is about. Share your experiences of any changes you made in course communication with students, or how, what changes you had to go through. Our first comment is quality matters is excellent as a shared evaluation conversation facilitator. We used retrofitted versions to redesign fully online degrees prior to COVID. So that's great. We're firm believers in best practices, and Quality Matter does follow those. Any other experiences of changes you made? You know, many of us got used to walking in the classroom, seeing our students. You could just ask them a question. Now you have to intentionally, you know, text them or email them, post it in your course, or, you know, any of the number of ways. Lots of tools. You check out your LMS. The LMS I use, like I said, has intelligent agents, has checklists, besides announcements or news. It's got notifications you can do by text or by email or both. Lots of different tools like that that can help you out. A syllabus with an attached schedule is a communication tool, very powerful one. So there's lots of different ways we can do this. Promoting the use of Zoom and teaching faculty and students how to use it efficiently. That's a good point, because it's the preferred means of communication, as well as the inbox in Canvas or D2L or whatever LMS you're using. Excellent.
Karen, we're going to walk everybody through the accessibility piece right now in the courses. One of the things that we found that was extremely viable, and we just finished working with another college, in fact, two colleges that were working together. And one of the things that was interesting is how many of them didn't know about all the tools they could use for accessibility.
And I'm sure Rebecca will chime in, because I know this is like her favorite topic, accessibility. So we, as you can see, we have it in the upper left-hand corner. So we have communications, and then accessibility and learning technologies. These are my like 3 areas of passion, okay? And they all have their place, and they should all have some sort of plan. Course accessibility is a law. It's nothing new. It's been the law. Everything, including your course shell, your content, your assessments, are all required to be accessible, not just for those that may need it, accommodation. This is equal access for all students, okay? So keep that in mind. Minnesota has a site you can go to. I'm sure other states do too, where they have a Office of Accessibility, and you can go and check web pages, you can check links. So check out your not only your school accessibility tools, but your state's education stuff. So course and course material, like I said, has to be accessible. That's websites. That's not only the things you put up there, but everything you link to, okay? So if you're linking to an X site, an outside YouTube, TED Talks, whatever, make sure if it's a video, it's closed caption, you know, all of these things. There's a 2-pronged approach. You have to meet the ADA requirements, and it includes documents, videos, and access to the internet and to your LMS, okay, on any number of devices. Nowadays, many of our students are getting by with just a mobile device, okay? Course material designed and meeting ADA requirements. So faculty and designers need to demonstrate that their content is accessible. There are accessibility tools you can put in an LMS. Metro State University, where I'm at now, has Ally, which is a plugin, and it works wonderfully, and it catches anything that you may have missed. That's wonderful. Discussions on your campus, college campuses, are needed to expand the ability for students to access courses through a variety, like I said, of devices and internet connections, okay? There's also other accessibility tools. There's speech to text, text to speech, like ReadSpeaker. There's ReadWrite Gold. There's lots of tools that your college or your campus probably has that you may or may not be aware of. So check with that. And if you don't know about them, chances are your students don't know about them. And so I always make sure that whatever school I'm teaching for, right now I'm at 2 newer schools that I'm just starting to teach for, and I've had to learn what they had versus, you know, what my former school that I retired had. So every school has a different package, and you just need to find out what's available how it works, who they have to go to. Students nowadays pretty much have to self-disclose for accommodations, but for ADA accessibility and compliance, it should be available for everyone, okay? Which that leads us into learning technologies. This is another area that people, when they learn about a new technology, just want to use it. Even though I'm an IT faculty person, I don't believe in using technology just to use it, okay? So I say, to tech or not to tech, first you have to assess what you need. So to add technology, you need to have a reason, and it either gives students better practice, better methods, or access to some information that perhaps they didn't have, but something that'll help them master the learning outcomes better than they would without it. Students can use technology if it's something that you know they're going to use in the workplace, such as Office or Teams, something like that. Students should learn or remain current with widely used technological innovations, like texting. Active learning, student retention, and engagement, we know are all priorities, and certain technologies will help to improve them, okay? So don't just because you see something neat, put it in, okay? You need to assess the reason you would use it and make sure there's not a steep learning curve for the student, because you don't want to be assessing them on if they learned the software or the technology, but on, how it would help them learn, master the learning outcomes. So I would say that besides a communication plan, you need a technology plan. It'd be different for each class, because some classes make it more viable to use, okay? So for the third chat, I'd like you to share experiences of any changes you made in either the accessibility or the learning technologies to help students learn more in the truly online environment. Okay, Rebecca says Canvas has an immersive reader available for pages as well as an accessibility checker. And those are built right into Canvas. That's great. Anybody else?
We were finding out from faculty in the course that we just taught with them was this idea that they're really trying to use more with VR and being able to go into, especially in science labs and medical fields, to be able to do a lot more with that, because they've been really caught back on being able to get into clinics and hospitals and things like that for clinical observations as well as practice. And so we're really trying to find those alternative ways to be able to use the learning technology to give students those same experiences.
We're down to our last 10 minutes, so I'm going to turn it back over to Zala.
We'll talk about assessing. And as we do, we're going to start with course quality assessment first. There's a variety of ways to be able to informally assess your courses. These are sort of the easier, perhaps cheaper ways of being able to do that. We won't spend as much time talking about the formal assessments, but we'll mention them quickly here, and that is that you've got the end of course surveys, you've got peer-reviewed course design, like the Quality Matters and other organizations like that. You have advisory committees or councils that actually review the curriculum. You have the opportunity to participate in accreditation visits or a program review process that helps you look through all of those others. Those informal ways, I'll go back to that for a second, the informal ways really test drive your course with colleagues and former students and things that way that you think as you make improvements or you think that you have taken their feedback and you've done something with them, you can actually talk it over with them and make those changes. Absolutely, the quality, measuring the quality as you're teaching those courses, this whole idea of creating your own surveys and evaluations, the whole idea of using the CATs and LATs, the 1-minute papers, those kinds of things can work well online as well as in a face-to-face type of situation. One of the things that I tend to find that I get the most from is using the reflection of student writing in the course shell discussions to be able to really get them to talk about how they're going to use the material, what they're really picking out of the units, the chapters, what's the most meaningful for them, and then of course the measuring the quality after you teach, and taking a look at your own opportunity to sort of self-assess your course using a variety of rubrics. In the book we wrote, we used, again, these kinds of ideas. We used created a rubric that was blending some of QM, of what Fink did, as well as the 6 authors having best practices on their own campuses. And so, a table, for instance, from that set of rubrics just really talks about the course overview, and you can get a chance to really take a look at some of the things that were happening, and that you could really kind of go back through and look and see whether or not your course stands up to that. Many of these will prepare you for a formal review in that way. So what I'd like you to do right now is, again, share your own experiences in chat of how you assess your course quality. What of those kinds of tools or other tools or feedback are you using to be able to really get a good idea of measuring how good your course is?
We've got the first one about informal assessments offer the opportunity for learners to offer you formative feedback, identifying which resources you provide versus what is provided within technology platforms can help the learner differentiate between what is working and what is not. Cool.
And that's a great future kind of thing for them to be able to do. The more assessing that they can do like that, they're going to be using that in the workplace. They're going to be using that in their professional situations going forward. It also helps them develop skills in their own personal lives of being able to assess something and take it apart and take a look to see how it really can impact their quality of their life and what their future work is going to be like by giving them those skills.
It also helps the student feel that you care. You're asking their opinion, you want to know, and they know then that you care. So it helps on a lot of levels.
All right. So, of course, all of these things become critically important, and you can glance through here. These are some of the things that people have shared with us as we've gone through and we've presented, that you can actually use some of the same assessments that you're using to monitor student progress, or the learning for the grade kind of a situation, as well as the student progress for what it is they're doing as they're moving through your program, and the quality of the course. So one assessment can give you actually 3 measures of different kinds of data that you're going to be able to pull together. And that helps you tremendously. It helps the students tremendously. Let's take a look at those things. As many of you know from your background and what you've done, you've got a wide variety of learning assessments that we take a look at, that we gain some of this information out from the students. We're going to take a look at this sort of auditive versus educative type of thing. The auditive works great for its backwards looking assessment. That's the stuff that you use at the knowledge base to be able to check to make sure that they have that foundational knowledge. Everything under educative assessment gets to be the forward-looking assessment. It gets students to self-assess. It uses rubrics. It gives them some feedback that's frequent, immediate, discriminating, and respectful. And what you do is you get those better learning, more authentic, both grading and more authentic assessment kinds of pieces, where you can get students to be able to participate and learn and really project what their learning is going to do for them. So what I'd like you to do right now is, again, share in the chat the experiences of the different strategies that you use to assess students in online learning courses.
And we're down to about 4 minutes now, so. Class talk, weekly reflections between student and instructor, addressing any needs. I know I myself like to do a final reflection on what did you learn that you will take with you, take out into the world outside of this class type of thing.
Part of what we'll do is we'll keep moving on since we're just a little short on time at this point. But everything that you're doing here, of course, works all the way from this sort of assessment framework that runs from the course all the way up to institutional assessments. And so as you do courses, you take a look at the outcomes, you look at the survey assessment information, you then work toward department assessments or program assessments, all the way up to institutional assessments. It gives you that opportunity to create a pathway that frankly should be aligned and sometimes isn't. So at this point, the last little bits that we have here is really talking about your reflection of practice, the kinds of things that you're doing, where you're learning from literature, you use this information in your courses, you assess the effectiveness, you're sharing it with other colleagues, and that gets you to, again, think about the reflection of your own teaching and student learning practice that wants you to go dig into some more literature, or as we do in this, it really gives us a chance to give us an opportunity to use the cycle of course design to think about what you need to do to change in your course so that you get the optimal amount of material and the best kind of practice for students to be able to learn and take with them. So the last chat that we're going to ask you to do is, how is a reflection of practice playing a role in your own professional teaching and learning experiences? Any responses?
Somebody
in
said
chat?
it made me flexible and better teacher.
Anything else that we have, Karen?
Opens to student concerns.
It certainly does that. And I think if nothing else, it really builds that empathy of how students are learning. And as we've done the Online Course Design Institute, a lot of people haven't taken many online courses, and they're starting to now, of course, and they're taking more, but starting to get the feeling of what it is for students. If you'd like to download the slide deck and that kind of information, you can see the information there. Go ahead and take a photo of this if you'd like, so that you've got that. It gives you the idea of how to be able to take a look at it. We've got the whole slide deck there for you to take a look at, as well as information on the Online Course Design Institute, information about the book, all those kinds of things that are in there together. And so we don't have a book fair here at this conference to be able to take a look at, but you can hit the QR code there and can get information about the book if you're interested in doing that, plus a discount on that. But at any rate, we enjoyed getting a chance to speak with you today and get an opportunity to take a look at that. Tomorrow at the same time, we'll be doing something on the introverted and extroverted learners and designing courses for that. So at any rate, we'll just open it up. Anybody have any other things they'd like to talk about in the time? But I know we're really short on time the way it is,
We have
right?
one last comment, and Kate says in her grad program, they use reflection to prove competencies to earn badges. It gives you the opportunity to reflect on your coursework and how it relates to real life. Great idea.
That's an excellent deal. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference today, and we look forward to talking with you, seeing you in other sessions.
And on behalf of ELK, thank you so much. This is your moderator. What a great session. Friends, in the chat is a link to the survey. If you'll take a few minutes to fill that out, that would be terrific. And in addition to the materials here, check out Discord. The PowerPoint will be posted there, along with the YouTube channel. The recording will be posted within the next week or so. Again, thank you so much. We'll see you. Guess what? I'm moderating for you again tomorrow. So I'll see you then.
Thanks, Linda.